A central teaching of the Gene Keys is that we are here to evolve, to learn and grow as our soul, or what the Gene Keys calls our causal body, gets further refined. And it's the pathway of Dharma that brings us the lessons. It brings us experiences and people that are meant to drive that soul refinement. And it does it via the sphere of attraction. So this pathway connects the sphere of our purpose, which we talked about just last time, up to the sphere of attraction. And so on one end, we've got this sphere representing our astral body. More on that later as well, but it's our emotions, our desire, our sexual drive. And on this end, we've got our purpose, our way of being in the world. And if you remember, the last pathway that we talked about that connects our radiance to our purpose is this pathway of core stability. So when you are anchored or rooted in your purpose, it allows us to walk this pathway of Dharma in a totally new way. Because our astral body, which again is our emotions and desires, are cleaner. They're less blurry. We get less bogged down in them in the day-to-day, and it allows us to make decisions that serve us instead of being stuck in this shadow loop that can so easily come up. And down at the bottom, when we are anchored in our core stability, we can begin to walk our soul's Dharma without us constantly getting in the way, without us constantly setting ourselves back all the time. And from your purpose, which remember is a way of being, your purpose has nothing whatsoever to do with what you do in your life. That is more tied to your life's work. Your purpose is just this quality of consciousness. And when you are embodying that quality of consciousness, everything in your life emerges, and it emerges in flow, and it unfolds in a way where life gives you everything you need, and that is your Dharma. So when we ground our consciousness into our physical body and we start to really and truly trust it, to really believe that everything that's happening in your life is happening for a reason and that you're going to end up better off on it on the other side, although the middle might be extremely messy and it might be really hard and really uncomfortable as you deal with these things, you know what's coming at the end because you know that you're supported. You know that there's a universe, there's a God, there's a principle that is out there that is looking out for your best interest. And that allows us to gain access to our astral body in this new way. And when we're in the gift and the city of our purpose, we're able to use our astral body. So using our emotion, using our desire nature in a way that drives us forward. So we use them as fuel. We use the energy for things that are productive for the growth of our soul, as opposed to letting them thrust us into the pain cycle, the pleasure cycle, where we're just swinging from one thing to the next thing, just chasing what's immediately in front of us, even though it might not be what's best for us over the long term. And there's nothing wrong with short-term gratification sometimes. That's not at all what I'm saying. You just need to know, does it serve your soul's mission or does it not? And when we're stuck in the shadow of our purpose, it's our desire to control our emotion that is driving what we're doing. So we tried to get out the emotion by blaming another person, getting into anger, casting out whatever is actually yours, or we take it in and we blame ourselves, which is equally as counterproductive. The goal isn't for you to be ashamed or to feel guilty. The goal is to take what happened and to learn from it and do something else next time. Or the third option is that we hide from it when we're stuck in the shadow of our purpose. We hide from that emotion. We hide from the desire. We pretend like it's not there. But ultimately, that desire was put there by God. That emotion was put there for a reason, and we have to investigate what that reason is. Doesn't mean that you need to honor every desire that shows up, like meaning you don't have to actually act it out, but you do need to honor it in that you need to explore it. You need to sit with it. You need to talk about it with somebody and see where it goes. The emotion is the juice that we can use to interact with our Dharma productively. And that's why the sphere of attraction sits at the top of this pathway of Dharma, because it is that astral energy that allows us to engage in a productive manner with things. Or we can let our Dharma turn us into a victim. And we can pretend or say that everything that's happening, everything that's coming into my life is because I'm not supported. It's because I'm a bad person. It's because somebody else did this to me. And all of those things are just keeping you stuck in the shadow of all of your spheres. Now, I've mentioned the causal body when we first got going, which, like I said, is essentially the Gene Keys word for the soul. And that is causal body. And then up here, I've got the astral body. So what are these bodies? Let's talk about the 7 energy bodies, because it's important to know to be able to describe this pathway of Dharma. So the first body that we have is the one that everyone believes in, is our physical body. And our physical body is what we rooted into the sphere of purpose. It is the most dense. It's the slowest to shift. It's the thing that that connects us to our 5 senses. Ultimately, though, your physical body is the root. It's the foundation for all of the other bodies. So if your physical body doesn't feel safe, if you are holding tension, if you're holding stress, if your body is malfunctioning is the word that comes to mind because of something that's happened in your past, it makes the connection to all of the other bodies extremely difficult. And that's why we start at the activation sequence and we get into some sense of that core stability, because that brings us home into our physical body and it allows us further investigation into these other bodies. Then we've got the astral body, which we've already touched on. It's our emotional charge. It is our desire nature. It is tied intimately to our sexuality, and it is what leads us to interact with the world in a certain way. And again, that interaction is largely driven by the emotion that comes to you or by a desire that is put into you. What I will say is it can be helpful to think of these bodies more as instruments to pick up on what's around us versus the body producing the emotion, right? In that case, I can get into a scenario where I get trapped, I get stuck in this feedback loop that I can't break. But if you think about the astral body as our instrumentation or our ability to pick up on the energies that are around us, then we have this degree of separation and we can act a little bit differently. Our third body is our mental body. So this is our thoughts. In the West, this is what we are really attached to. We think about our consciousness as being in our head, and that our thoughts are dictating what we do and what we think and who we are. But better said, just like with the astral body, our thoughts really are instrumentation, or our brain is instrumentation to pick up on the thoughts that are happening around us. And that's why when you are in a good mood, you think differently than when you are in a not so good mood. So many people are stuck here in the mental body because we overestimate the importance of knowledge, and we underestimate the importance of the signaling of these other bodies, of the wisdom, of the unification principle that brings our mind, our body, our breath together. Now, the next one is the biggie that we're going to talk about here, is our causal body. And as I said, your causal body is essentially your soul in the Gene Keys teachings. It is your piece of God's plan to reunify itself again, to remember itself again, to experience itself again. And it is the part of you that moves with you from incarnation to incarnation. So there's this one atom that we carry forward as we walk this pathway of Dharma, and as our soul evolves, we get closer and closer to the light. We get closer and closer to reunion. And I'm not going to go deep into reincarnation here, but what I will say is I don't think that the spiritual mainstream belief in reincarnation is totally correct. I do believe that there is an archetypal part of you that gets closer to God as we learn and as we gain wisdom and as our soul evolves. And when we die, all the negative energy, all the things that we did that we know are counter to the thoughts and will and action of God, those things get kicked back into the collective. And that's what we can feel in our DNA. That 90% of our junk DNA that we're all carrying around, that is our collective karma from the past that was filtered out of each of us and kicked back into humanity at large so that we can transmute that as a collective. And that's why sometimes we feel heavy, even though we know that that heaviness isn't ours. Then what happens with all the positive energy, with all the good stuff that you did when you die, is it gets sucked back up into this causal body. And you pass and your soul goes back to wherever that soul goes during that time, and then you get incarnated again, and as you come back, all that good from your causal body stays where it was, and you walk through your next evolution, your next incarnation. And then over time, we get more light, we get more love, we get closer to God. And the pathway of Dharma is what drives that refinement. The 5th, 6th, and 7th bodies, I'm not going to really get into here, but the 5th body is the Buddhic body. And that is the oneness, that is the connectedness of all things. If you've ever had that feeling, then that is the Buddhic body. It's the thing that makes us all the same underneath. Then we've got the Atmic body. And this is essentially divine mind, divine will. It is our ability to know, not to have knowledge, but to just know, because it's like Neo in the Matrix where he learns Kung Fu or how to fly a helicopter in an instant. It's this connection to divinity. And then finally, the last one is the monadic body. And this is alpha, omega, everything, nothing. It's really even outside of my ability to describe. So those are the 7 energy bodies. And like I said, the ones that really pertain to this pathway of Dharma are 1 through 4. So we need to be rooted in our physical body. We need to interact with our astral body in a way that serves us instead of getting lost in a loop. We need to know that our thoughts are not the end-all be-all, that there's more information available to us if we're willing to look. And then our soul is what is capturing our growth, our evolution, and refining it further over time. And our Dharma is the path that is set by our soul. When we choose what we're going to do, when we come back to this planet, which I think is what happens, we're choosing our Dharma. It's where we have the opportunity to learn and grow in our interaction with the illusory world. The key to those exchanges in that illusory world, though, is to remember the causal body, to remember God, to remember that there is a component of this world that is Maya. It is illusion. And we tend, because of our five senses, because it's a very compelling experience, to identify with this Maya. But as our soul, our causal body gets refined, more and more we're able to identify with it, to what's behind this illusion or this Maya. And you know that you're accepting your Dharma because you feel like you are in flow. You feel ease, and life becomes a dance. It's like you're able to use every event in your life to serve your purpose. Even the smallest things. Right behind the camera is the kitchen. And even when I'm doing the dishes, when I'm preparing food, I try and remember that the food that I'm preparing is nourishing my soul so that I can do this video with energy and in a way that serves. When I'm doing the dishes, I'm remembering that my space, when it's clean, leads my mind to be uncluttered and allows me to do things in a way that serves humanity better. Just those tiny things, if we can remember that connection, that allows us to walk this pathway of Dharma. And the way that we can make that connection is through myth and through archetype. Because it is our myths and our archetypes that give us access to knowing the ending of the story. Those stories are there for a reason. They're there to teach us universal principles that are at play, that are lower or below the things that we can see in our everyday lives. You've been told so many times through a Disney movie, through a movie like The Matrix, through wisdom traditions like if you've ever read the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita, that the world is looking out for you and that it is a happy ending and that you are going to have eternal life and peace. And yet we choose to believe something else. But when you start to listen to the myths, when you start to see the heroic journey and all of the archetypes associated with it, then you can start to believe. Because stories are here to remind us of truth. And when you begin to take them to heart, you can actually start to listen. So what just popped into my mind is the 13th gene key. And it's discord, discernment, and empathy. So discord at the shadow is hearing all of these stories and still choosing to identify with the fact that life is hard, with the fact that you're on your own and that you got to work your butt off in order to get what you want in life, and you got to be a jerk and there's not enough for everybody else. That's one version of the story, and that's what discord tells us. The next version of the story comes with the gift, and it's discernment, and it is listening to these myths. Discernment is listening to love, listening to the wisdom traditions and all the teachers that provide us with an alternative story. Why wouldn't you want to listen to the other story when you know what the Maya and attachment to it brings? When you know that you're safe and everything's going to be okay, then you can take your daily Dharma with a grain of salt, right? You can see it with some separation, with a knowing that it's tricky right now because you are still in the middle of the story. You're in the middle of the drama, but because of the myth, you've seen the ending. And so you can interact with those things that are showing up to you in a positive way, in a way that gets you closer to that ending instead of thinking that each and everything that happens to you is going to be the end of the world. But if we keep it at a distance, instead of being tight and fearful about what might happen because of this event or this person that came into your life, instead you're willing to look into what's actually happening in that moment. You're willing to really investigate it. You know that right now this sucks, but there's something in here that's going to bring you closer to that happily ever after. And when you get to that point, that is the great turning point in somebody's life. When you know happily ever after is not just a fairy tale, then you know that there is a hidden world that is always at work to draw out your higher nature, to further refine your causal body. And in doing that, you respond to everything in the world differently. We tend so often to get caught in the outer drama, and because we run from it, we never allow it all the way in, where it turns us inward on ourselves. And that inability or unwillingness to turn inward keeps us from sucking in those lessons. And that's happening because we don't believe that our Dharma is what is best for us. We don't believe in happily ever after. Instead of being stuck in shame and in blame, you can open to something much deeper and much more expansive when anything happens in your life. You believe these myths, you believe the story, and from that, they open another world. They open a world where magic is real and that anything can happen at any moment. A world where we can see our intention, our attitude, and our purpose are what are dictating the outer world. So often, we believe the opposite. Right? The current paradigm tells us it's the other way around, that your life dictates how you feel inside. Because this thing happened to me, I feel this way. But in reality, you feel this way, so that thing happened to you. And that is a huge shift, an eye-opening, frame-shifting, transmuting moment for people to see. Overcoming that illusion is a huge part of the pathway of Dharma. A lot of the reason the same things, the same cycles are happening to you over and over again is because you haven't embodied that realization. And that takes a long time, and I am just getting there right now. Logically, I've believed this for a long time. Emotionally, physically, at a deep level, I was not in trust. And you need to bring it all the way into your core. You need to bring it all the way down into the base, right? Your perineum, your belly, your deep, deep pelvic floor, in order for this story shift, this truth to start to take hold in your life. Now, it doesn't mean that your outer life doesn't matter. Just that it's a reflection, not the actual image itself. Your outer life is a projection, and it does matter. And there is a lot of suffering, and there are people that need help. I'm not saying that all that matters is your internal experience, but what I am saying is that you can't get attached to that external image, because it prevents you from also having an internal experience that allows you to serve the world. Dharma teaches us that we need outer strength and we need inner strength. We need to be a warrior and we need to be a monk. And the outer strength allows us to see our shadow. It gives us the courage to engage with the shadow. And like I was talking about earlier, to go all the way into it and to mine for those lessons and to not blame somebody else or blame yourself or run away from it. Then we've got our inner strength, which gives us the ability to look deeply at our outer circumstances and to learn from them. So our outer strength, we catch what's happening, and our inner strength, we're able to change what's happening over time with patience, with gentleness, as you are integrating your seeing how you're acting in your life. And outer strength also gives us the ability to operate cleanly when those shadows show up. We can see them and we can disassociate a little bit, not in a way where we're not feeling, but in a way where we remember that we're in this myth. And then from there, we can use our outer strength to stop our shadow pattern in its tracks. And then we can really spend some time inside to figure out how we got triggered into that shadow pattern in the first place. And then the cycle continues. And it's just this constant cycle as we walk this pathway of Dharma, further and further refining our soul. And the 64 gene keys are designed to connect us to the hidden forces that are driving our life. There is a universal force, like it or not. There is rhythm and there is flow to what is happening around you. And the gene keys are the archetypes of understanding how to work with all of those different energies that are being presented to you. Each gene key resonates with an aspect of the lessons that we're currently going through in that moment. And that's why your profile isn't the whole story. So the 64 gene keys give us a map of all the energy around the universe. And your profile gives you a snapshot of the energies that you use to engage with that map. Even better, it's like your profile is the legend or the key, your personal key to interacting with those 64 keys. And regardless of your profile, all of these 64 energies are going to show up in your life through your Dharma. They're going to come in, and you have to find the gift in each and every one of them. There's a big joke in the Gene Keys teaching, and it is that the system begins to show its true form as we approach the void, the one point. Nothing can survive a black hole. So as we get into that core stability and we anchor into our purpose, we start to notice something in this system. This self-destruct feature that the comedian that Richard Rudd is put into this program. And that is a teaching that you don't need any external advice. The system is here to dare you to move beyond the system. That's why when people get bogged down in all of these minute questions or get sucked into their human design profile and looking at like the very specific circumstances, and this is how I need to react when this thing happens, and I'm gonna lean on this map for the rest of my life, that defeats the purpose. It's just like Christianity also. The Bible isn't there to be a literal interpretation of how you are meant to live your life. It's here to teach you a story that allows you to live that map. It allows you to live in a way similar to Christ. And the only way that we can get there is to move beyond the system that got us there in the first place, to let go and to trust in the pathway of Dharma. And this pathway of Dharma is in the Venus sequence. And so we know because of that, it has a lot to do with our relationships. And the drama that we feel is often the thickest in our relationships. That's often the time that we have the hardest time in dealing with our astral body. Our issues are brought to our attention by people that we interact with, especially those people that we're closest to. So our relationships are the bringers of our Dharma, which then gives us a choice. Are we going to react with this person in a way that brings up our shadow, or in a way that brings up our gift? And we get that choice over and over again. That is Dharma's favorite way to bring you its lessons. And that's why the Gene Keys advocates for using relationships as a means of transformation. Wherever you feel the most resistance to another person, maybe it's your boss who you think is a jerk, or your spouse who doesn't do the things that you ask them to do, or your brother, or your sister, or your mother, or your father, wherever you feel that the most, that is the place where the greatest transformation can occur. And most of us these days aren't called to be monks. And so we have to use our lives as a means of getting closer to God, and therefore closer to yourself. And that essentially is the teaching of the Gene Keys. Instead of going to an ashram, instead of needing to meditate for 12 hours a day, you get to engage with the world. And it's that engagement with the world that brings your Dharma and allows you to further refine your soul. So where are you resisting your Dharma? That is a call to surrender. So anytime you feel resistance, we need to fall back into this pattern of trust, into that core stability, into our purpose, and let go. And surrender is not giving up. Surrender is trusting. It's knowing that something is on the other side. That is the journey of the golden path. Your Gene Keys profile teaches you how to do this over and over again. All right, so I'll finish up here just with a quick reminder. We have our wisdom call on July 11th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Google Meet. And you can register at the community tab of my channel. It is totally free. What is a wisdom call? Essentially, we're going to talk about things from the Gene Keys. So maybe it's a specific Gene Key, maybe it's a pathway, maybe it's something to do with the lines, maybe it's applying this wisdom to something in your life, and I'm gonna facilitate a conversation. And my vision with this is that it's going to be a deep conversation, and from that, other people in the group are going to be able to intuit their own learnings from this person's example. And we'll talk to a few different people, and I'll also let other people chime in with the wisdom that they have. And I think it will be really impactful. I've already got like 28, the last time I looked, people registered. I'd love to have you there. I don't know how long it'll go, but it'll go as long as it needs to go. I'm really just gonna let the room decide what's up. If you came to the last call, it's gonna be totally different. I did a lot of investigating how to run these calls in a way that delivers value and feels good for everyone there. And I think, I'm still gonna need to learn. This is only our second one, but I think that this is gonna be much more impactful. All right, that's the pathway of Dharma. Thank you so much. Hopefully I will see you on Thursday.